Ask and you shall receive. Hi everyone, my name is Charlie, and today I am going to talk about Christmas 1997. The Christmas my sister destroyed a doll's house. This story begins like any other Christmas story. On Christmas Eve 1997, at number 1 Lancaster Court in Macclesfield, a block of flats that no longer exists after being bulldozed in 1999, two children sharing a bedroom are struggling to sleep. Those children are myself and my sister Jessica. Now, to give you an idea of how our years were usually spent, our bedroom was filthy. It was dirty. We kept our toys all over the floor. You used to hurt your feet every time you walked between beds. I burnt myself on the radiator I don't know how many times, having to squeeze between Jessica's bed and the wall to get out of the room. This Christmas in particular, we had a set of drawers beneath the window, and we used to like to play on our windowsill. Indeed, I once hid a copy of Witches Abroad by Terry Pratchett in the window after I had a nightmare and thought the witches were going to get me. And so I just waited until the 3 weeks were up to return it to the library. Didn't know it was an adult book. So, one game that we used to like to play in this window was Stars in Their Eyes. But we'll come to that momentarily. So, these two children, Charlie and Jess, are sleeping in their beds full of excitement because back in 1997, they had a huge family. Both their grandparents, well, 4 grandparents were still alive, then their mother's grandparents were still alive, and their mother's grandmother had 2 sisters, and then they had a cousin or 2, which of their grandparents that also gave them money and toys, and they had aunties because their uncle couldn't stop marrying, and it was a whole thing, a huge conglomeration of people giving them gifts. And it was an exciting time to be a child when you had nearly 20 people, if not more, giving you gifts at Christmas. Obviously, my parents were poor, so we were our gifts from them were big, but came from charity shops. This Christmas in particular is a memorable Christmas for me, for Charlie, because when Charlie awakes on Christmas morning, he walks into the living room and discovers the Power Rangers Turbo Rescue Megazord, a gift from his grandparents that he never expected to receive, and still to this day I question how they managed to afford it, and honestly, that's the only one that I don't let my nephew play with. Yes, it's a bit broken now because I was 5 myself when I received it, but nephew broke enough toys of mine in his time being alive for me to say, no, leave that one alone. Nostalgia here. And alongside my rescue Megazord, which was my biggest present that year from my grandfather and grandmother, and I don't know who else because it's been 22 years, sue me, my sister received a doll's house. This doll's house was pink. I believe it was something to do with Barbie. And she was absolutely thrilled by it. It went into our bedroom beside the drawers that I have mentioned previously. And she's thinking about all the things that she can play with in this doll's house, all the Barbies that have been collected from charity shops over the years. Then it happens. So, Christmas dinner has happened. Our parents are watching the Christmas editions of soaps, or whatever was on the telly at the time in the living room, and Charlie and Jessica choose to go off to their bedroom for an evening game of Stars in Their Eyes. A game that they had played regularly because we came out from behind the curtain, stood on these drawers, and I am Jessica's only audience member, sat there waiting for her to come out from behind the curtain. The other day we were trying to remember what she actually sang, and through process of elimination believed that it was Steps' Tragedy, which seems apt considering what would soon happen. Jessica goes behind the curtain and says, "Tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be Steps." Comes out and immediately starts singing. She was in her pyjamas and socks. Socks are notoriously slippy on any sort of shiny surface. I remember telling her that she needed to step towards the window because she was about to fall off the drawers, but Jessica didn't listen to me. And Jessica plummeted from the drawers onto the doll's house below. Her screams of pain were also filled with tears at the sudden loss of something she had been planning so much with. My father and mother come running into our bedroom to find Jessica amongst the remains of this doll's house. And despite their best efforts, there was nothing that could put the doll's house together again. And so Jessica's biggest present ended up being lost within 24 hours of receiving it. Notably, Charlie's guilt was felt for another 13 years when he ended up purchasing his sister a second-hand doll's house because the guilt had lived with him that long. Even though it wasn't his fault, he couldn't help but feeling as though he had played a part in the loss of the doll's house, and still to this day wonders just what Jessica would have turned out like if she had only been able to play with her dolls in that house. Would she have gone on to enjoy the company of animals so much? We'll never know. She could have gone on to become one of England's premier drag kings because the doll's house didn't make it to Boxing Day, and Jessica's hopes were dashed in that moment. Even Charlie's rescue Megazord could not rescue that doll's house. So, did Jessica ever play with the second doll's house she was bought? No. Indeed, my nephew was just coming up to a year old when I bought it, and so he played with it more than she ever would. But it is the thought that counts, and I was trying to capture 21 presents to encapsulate 21 years. And that is the tragedy of my sister's doll's house. If you have any similar stories and you would like to share them, please feel free to do so in the comments below. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.